If we look at early Roman busts or statues, such as for example the famous Augustus statue of Prima Porta, we are immediately struck by the exquisite detail and incredibly high level of craftsmanship displayed. The statue almost feels lifelike. The realistic facial features of the emperor, the incredible detail of the breastplate, and the realistic way how the cloth falls with all its creases. But then we look at a bust from the late Roman Empire, such as this one here of Valentinian III, and we are immediately struck by the much lower level of detail and apparently inferior artistic complexity. The same picture with coins. Early Roman coins until the crisis of the 3rd century display a very high level of detail, but then in the 4th and especially 5th centuries, the quality dropped considerably. What had happened? Had art started to decline? Was this a deliberate choice of the artists? Was this a new artistic style? Or was this a degradation of the art itself in the late Roman Empire? Let us try to answer that question, friends of late Roman history. If we admire statues or busts from the Roman Republic or the early to mid-Roman Empire, we find that the art style was quite constant for hundreds of years. This very detailed style was called naturalistic, in that it tried to portray the features of the depicted person in as realistic a way as possible, complete with all the facial features, features of the armor or clothing, even down to the way the cloth behaved. This naturalistic style was based on the Greek style of masters of artisanship such as Phidias or Lysippus. When the Romans started expanding in the age of the Republic, the Greek colonies of southern Italy had many statues that then fell into Roman hands, thus greatly influencing Roman art itself. This was then the artistic style which the Romans cultivated, and we can see that virtually all busts and statues from the later Republic and early Empire were all made in this naturalistic art style. Even later into the Empire, the art style remained the same. We can see the bust of Septimius Severus and his son Caracalla displaying the same realism and detail of busts from 300 or 400 years earlier. The first time when we would actually see a significant change in the artistic style was, as so often, in the crisis of the 3rd century. While the busts of Gallienus and Claudius II still have a very high amount of detail, busts of Probus, Carinus and of Diocletian are already of notably lower complexity. Facial features now seem stylized, the eyes are much less lifelike, the hair and beard show fewer details, and the facial features just seem less realistic. What had happened? Well, first of all, the figure of the emperor became more and more authoritarian. Probus was the last emperor to acknowledge the Senate of Rome, while his successor Carus already chose to ignore this ancient order, and Diocletian would then be the first to actually completely undermine the Roman Senate, thus establishing the dominate. So there was a shift in power towards the person of the emperor. But that cannot be the only explanation for the change in artistic style, because the bust of Probus, who still recognized the Senate, was already starting to become more simplified. So there must have been another cause, and the cause probably was that the crisis of the 3rd century was utterly devastating. The empire had split into 3 parts, there were barbarian invasions on all fronts, the quality of life started to deteriorate, some cities were completely abandoned, and the 200-year-long Pax Romana had come to an end. It is thus very likely that in these turbulent and chaotic times, it was just more difficult to find skilled artisans, and so less and less people could be found who had the necessary skill level in order to craft such exquisite busts. Also, as the reign of all emperors had become incredibly short, it had become prudent to complete the busts faster. All these effects led to a gradual shift in the artistic style towards something more simplistic. Thus, the choice of simplification was not entirely deliberate. Of course it was in parts, in order to visualize the overarching authority of the emperor, taking away his individualistic features, replacing him with an undefined figure of authority. But that doesn't explain why Probus, who was still not shifting towards the dominate, already had more simplistic features. So this means there must have been a real shortage of skilled craftsmen. This would also explain why there aren't any statues of emperors who lived in the most chaotic of times, such as for example Majorian or Antiquity. Because in the most utterly chaotic times, it was probably simply impossible to find a good artisan. And also the priority of making statues when the empire was falling apart was probably not very high. But I will have to analyze this notion in more detail in a separate video. And if you want to support this channel but you think that a Patreon or YouTube membership doesn't give you enough benefits, then please support this channel by using Atlas VPN. You can get a huge discount by using Atlas VPN with the following special Maiorianus link, which you can also find in the description. Not only do you thus support the channel, but you can also get a steal Black Friday deal, because now you can get Atlas VPN Premium for just $1.70 per month, plus 6 months extra with a 30-day money-back guarantee. It's the best Atlas VPN offer of the year, so be quick and get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below. But be fast, because it's a limited time offer. And of course, I also use Atlas VPN because it has a super intuitive user interface, is extremely fast, and even has more advanced features such as a kill switch. You can watch Netflix with content from other countries, you can keep Google searches private so that you are not spammed with unwanted ads, you can save money while shopping online in other regions, you can even use Atlas VPN on an unlimited number of devices, and you are even protected from malware and malicious links. It doesn't get any better than that. You have an excellent deal with the best VPN service and are even supporting this channel here. But this is a limited time offer, so don't hesitate too long. Julius Valerius Maiorianus himself would be proud, and I'm sure that he would have used Atlas VPN had it existed back then. Click on the Maiorianus link in the description to get this incredible Black Friday deal. Thanks, friends of late Roman history, and gratias tibiago. Then with Diocletian or Diocletian, the dominate became established. But interestingly, we can find quite different looking busts of Diocletian. We find the simplified ones, but there are also still very complex looking ones. We thus see that the two different art styles coexisted, so it probably was a personal choice of the artisan, which style would suit him better, and probably how fast he needed to complete the bust. So it depended on time pressure, and of course also depending on his personal skill level. This is another indication that the simplified style cannot have only been due to the dominate. Of Diocletian's co-emperor Galerius, however, we only have busts of the simplified style remaining. There might have been others of the naturalistic style, but they haven't been found yet. But after Christianity rose to power, it seems that the naturalistic style became even more rare. Of Constantine, for instance, there is not one single surviving bust or statue of the naturalistic style. We only find simplified ones. The later Christian emperors of the 4th century almost exclusively adopted the simplified style, and here I think that this was indeed an artistic choice. Christianity emphasized the heavenly divine and the afterlife, thus reducing the importance of the individual, but increasing the importance of God. Therefore, the emperor became an abstract figure, one like the other, interchangeable, because God held the actual power. And we can see this clearly in the art style of the busts of the first Christian emperors. It is no coincidence that the Emperor Julian had himself depicted in the old naturalistic style. So by the time of Julian, there must have still been artisans capable of replicating the old Greek style, because Julian's face and the cloth he wears show very detailed features as would have been common a few hundred years earlier. Julian wanted to restore the old ways, and consequently the art should reflect that. Busts of later emperors such as Honorius or Arcadius then became even more simplistic, again emphasizing the reduction of the individual even more, with the increasing power of Christianity. But interestingly, this also can't be the whole explanation, because a head of a statue of Theodosius was found, showing quite some detailed facial features, much more in line with the traditional art style. So it appears that the old style still coexisted with the new style for quite some time. Even for example, this bust of Leo I, Eastern Roman Emperor from 457 to 474 AD, still shows a more naturalistic style than a simplified one. So we see that overall, the skill set needed to make statues of the old Greek style was present in the Roman Empire until very late. and so quite likely the choice of style depended on the personal preference of the emperor and on the capability of the artisan and artistic choice. Even as late as Justinian in the mid-6th century, we can still find simplified busts, such as this head of Justinian in Venice, which was carried off during the sack of 1204 from Constantinople. But then suddenly we find this head of probably Justinian, where we can still find the old naturalistic style. So we see we cannot really say that the art style declined, because there were still plenty of naturalistic looking statues and busts even well into the 6th century of the Eastern Roman Empire. But with coins, the picture is a bit more mixed. Here too we find quite exquisite detail in the coinage for hundreds of years. The coins of Augustus and the early emperors are very detailed, but even the coins of Aurelian or Claudius Gothicus are still of excellent quality and complexity. Coins of Diocletian still are in the same style as decades earlier. There is no change visible. It is only in the 4th century that we would see a departure in the art style of coins, when suddenly the facial features of the emperors became much less lifelike and the pointed crown gave way to a pearly diadem. Constantine is the first emperor where we can see this shift occur. His earlier coins are still quite naturalistic, while his later coins are already dominated by the emerging early Christian art style. Yet despite the Christian style, the degree of details, for example on this coin of Constantius II, is still very high. The dress of the emperor shows a very high complexity, as well as his hair and the diadem. Even his facial features are still very recognizable. Here again, of course, the Emperor Julian preferred a more naturalistic style, where we can see his facial features in even more crisp detail. But even Valentinian still is visible in excellent detail on, for example, this coin here. A very sharp drop in quality of coinage can be observed in the Western Empire under Honorius. Even though both Valentinian and Honorius were very devout Christian emperors, the lower quality of Honorius' coinage is very visible on first sight. But since both were Christian emperors, we cannot attribute this drop in quality only to a deliberate choice. It is quite likely that the chaos and crisis of Honorius' reign in the West reflected itself in the deteriorated degree of complexity of his coins. As in the crisis of the 3rd century, it became suddenly quite hard to find capable artists who had the necessary skill set to craft elaborate coins of high complexity and quality. This becomes even more apparent with later coins, such as those of Emperor Majorian, who reigned half a century after Honorius. We can see another sharp drop in quality compared to, for example, a coin of Valentinian I. So the deliberate Christian style is not enough to explain this drop in quality. There must have been a severe lack of capable craftsmen, which is logical in these utterly dire times that the West was facing. Many craftsmen probably fled for their lives or were conscripted and had to fight against the Germanic invaders. Interestingly, there was an increasing quality during the Ostrogothic kingdom of Theodoric, which makes sense since Italy then saw an era of relative stability and peace again after the last chaotic decades of the fading Western Empire. In the East, meanwhile, the artistic style shifted also, very much resembling the artistic choice of the West, but with an expected higher quality. The coins of Constantine IV are noteworthy in my opinion because we can still find coins of high facial complexity such as this one here, but also very abstract ones in an updated Christian symbolism such as this one. Noteworthy is again how sometimes the degree of complexity is tied to how good or bad the times were in the empire. Coins of Empress Irene, for instance, are very simplified, whereas coins of Basil I already show a higher degree of complexity, and then coins of Basil II show an even higher degree of complexity, where we can again clearly distinguish the facial features of Jesus Christ on one side of the coin, and very excellent detail of the garment of the emperor and the empress on the other side of the coin. Unsurprisingly, the quality started to diminish when the empire started to decline again. So we see that the artistic style was only partially a deliberate choice. I think what we call a decline in the artistic style was very much tied to how well or how bad the empire was faring. In good times, there was a large pool of excellent craftsmen with a high skill set, whereas in bad times, you had to make do with what you could find. You couldn't be picky about the artisans that you found. So I personally think that the change in art style was a mixture of deliberate choice and skill of the craftsmen. That is why we time and time again witness a resurgence of detail and complexity when the empire was doing better, even as late as under Basil II. But of course by that time the style was completely dominated by Christian iconography. However, the very high quality is still quite astounding. So we cannot say that art declined in the late Roman Empire. Yes, it became different, but time and time again we saw a resurgence. And so instead of a decline of art, I would call it a shift towards a different style based on artistic style, choice, and the necessity of the times. And please like this video and subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. And please consider supporting my work on Patreon or via YouTube membership, because the long-term sustainability of this channel really depends on your support. And I would like to especially thank Michael Lipani, who supported the channel with a generous donation via PayPal. Thanks a lot, Michael, for your support. Seriously, this channel would not work without our amazing supporters. And I want to thank each and everyone who is supporting this channel in any form. Gratias tibi agua, Miki. And if you think that Patreon or YouTube membership doesn't give you enough benefits, please use the Atlas VPN link in the video description and pinned comment. That way you can get this limited time offer Steel Black Friday deal, giving you Atlas VPN Premium for just $1.70 per month plus 6 months extra with a 30-day money-back guarantee. It's really the best Atlas VPN offer of the year, so be quick and get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below. It's a limited time offer, and at the same time you also support this channel here. And if you are interested in learning more about why the empire declined in the West, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you are more interested in how the city of Rome must have looked when the empire fell, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history, gratias tibi ago, and bene valete.